if things aren't going well in your community, what are your options?
Yeah.
You can just leave and say, this is not the place for me.
Oh, you can leave.
You know?
No, you can. There's different ways to leave.
There's
even
different ways to leave.
You can leave
yes.
quietly,
Which is that,
or
right?
you can leave with a what is that?
Toss a grenade over your shoulder as you go. Yeah.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with S.J. Jennings, and we are in part 2 of Why is Community So Dangerous?
Or just dangerous community.
Yeah. Subtitle, Community Sucks. And throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Again, we ended the last episode talking a little bit about the community around an encounter weekend.
Yeah. We were just encouraging guys to go to the events page, zoweh.org/events. Check out the event coming up in the beginning of October.
Yeah.
And when the microphones shut off and we took a little break, I said, man, we ought to talk about what are the joys of community.
Yeah. Because
when we were talking about the encounter, all I could think about was the reunion. About half of the guys that go to an event are first-time guys, but that means the other half are alumni.
Yeah.
So when we go to an event, I mean, it's like, dude, what's up?
It's good
CP,
to see you.
What's up, man? John, Sean, how you doing? So it's a big reunion.
Even the leadership team, so the core team, guys who have been to a couple events, and now we've kind of, all right, you're a groupie, you're hanging out in this community, you get a job now, you
get a hat.
You can be in charge of something. And so, but to go up there, and even that day early when we're getting all set up, and those 50 some guys are showing up, it's a reunion. That's a great word for it. And, I like the idea that you just mentioned about what about the joy of community? And I think that, what we talked about in the first episode and what we're kind of after today is that communities are not perfect. They will not be perfect.
Nope.
They're people. But I would say, what if in the midst of that, there could be joy? And recovering from, bruises and abrasions as we bounce in or bang in to one another, I think that's a really significant part of an answer to joy. Because when things get lost or broken or shut down, communication, feelings get hurt, what happens next is the difference between, mutiny and restoring some kind of harmony. And
right. What we would refer to as redemptive community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's
because if you're in community, there's going to be opportunities for things to be redeemed.
Yes. Because there will be realities
right.
of we don't see this the same.
Right.
Or we're not in the same place. We were talking about, and as we prepare for October, we are talking about, are we saying things at the encounter weekend that are more advanced? And so for this community of first-timers, is this appropriate?
Right. Are we walking them into the pool, or are we kicking them into the deep end?
Throwing them in, and I think, most of the guys now come having read a book or having,
at least some of our content, maybe listen to the podcast.
Right. So that's extremely helpful, to stepping into any foreign land where, maybe you're not a card-carrying citizen yet.
oh man, what were those books? Fodor's, Fodor. There was like this huge, back when people used books. I'm sorry to go way off on the tangent, but there was this collection of books that, like, if you were going to Venice, you pick up the Fodor's. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it correctly. Maybe someone in the comment section can help me out. But it was it's kind of like the international AAA.
Okay.
And you picked up, if you were going internationally.
Chilton's. It's the Chilton's for whatever
exactly.
Whatever vehicle.
The how-to manual.
I didn't know that.
Places to eat, things to see, things not to miss, places to stay. It was all that. Yeah, man. I think that's what it was. I got to look it up. Go ahead. Finish your.
Yeah. So now I'm going to just talk to myself for a few minutes while SJ looks something up and goes, that's a good point, Michael. Yeah, that's really good.
It's I don't know if it's Fodor's or whatever it is, but now they have a website. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you brought that up about
it's a manual, though, to that community,
to moving around in that community,
right.
in that geography or that culture, because that's another great word. There's a culture, language.
Communities have cultures.
Yeah. What people are? You said something this morning about up in Boone, the Highland games. That's a culture
for sure.
It's a community.
Yeah, they're all crazy.
There's values that. Whatever they look like during the week, that weekend, kilts are in, man.
Kilts are in.
And so the guy who doesn't wear a kilt's like, man, where's the kilt shop?
Can I
get one of
Amazon?
those?
Yeah.
It's droned in so he can fit in.
That's right.
I think the joy part, that's a great idea, SJ, because when you get people together, you can hurt each other.
Yeah.
And whether it's false self, immaturity, just not knowing how to move in social spaces, but not knowing how to move in your space.
Yeah, or in the other person's space, right? You're new to the community. I didn't know that was going to bother you so much when I brought up X.
When I hit my teeth with my fork.
Yes. We love you, Greg.
Yeah,
quit doing that though.
Yeah, stop it. But yeah, this is a big, because when things go sideways or south, there's a few options.
Right. Yeah, and so in the break again between episodes here, that was something I asked, like, if things aren't going well in your community, what are your options?
Yeah.
And I think of the ones that, just as a person, I can think of, you can just leave and say, this is not the place for me.
Oh, you can leave. No, you can. There's different ways to leave. Even
different ways to leave.
You can leave quietly,
which is that,
or right? You can leave with a what is that?
Toss a grenade over your shoulder as you go. Yeah.
What is that? It's kind of like a departure statement. You're leaving, but you want to write a review. You're trying to, say, hey, I was on a call because of it was a customer service call with Best Buy, and I definitely wasn't getting what I needed or what I thought should have happened. And this guy goes, "Yeah, Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry." I said, you're not." It was not one of my prettier.
How long had you been on the phone at that point? 45 minutes.
The wait and the hold and the supervisor and all that. And so I said, so as a part of the, I think I said something like, don't say you're sorry, because I know you're supposed to say that. It's on your script. You're not sorry because you're not helping me. I said, be a human being, man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Be a human being. Because you already told me, you just told me that you don't blame me for feeling this way. You would feel the same way, but you won't click return label. So anyway, one of my finer, I'm telling you, you have so it's right. Your options at that point are click or what's your badge number?
Right.
I'm going to report you.
Right.
To that point where it just felt, it felt, I don't think I was being overly immature, that I wasn't getting my way and it was more like, no, this is This is unjust.
This is fundamentally wrong.
Right.
And your community, Best Buy,
you're not giving
says that
me,
it's the right way to do it, and that is just wrong.
And I understand the rule.
So what do? You leave? Are you going to shop at Best Buy again? Probably not.
I mean, I'm gonna try. I'll try to avoid it.
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
And that's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can send a message. Now we're talking about retailers now. Yeah. Not to diminish your experience.
But there's Target people and Walmart people.
And you can send a...
There's Harris Teeter people. And
you can type out a manifesto and say, how wrong they are. Or you can send a message and say, I really unfortunately feel like I can't be a part of your community anymore.
Here's why.
So there's different ways to do it. So there's an oriented way to do it and a disoriented way to do it.
I was probably right on the line.
Maybe on the line, but
let's look at the film and review that. It was, but you're bringing up some really good ideas about what do you do when the bruises happen or the sideways occurs, and and you can take your ball and go play somewhere else. Look for another team.
Yeah. What we don't want to promote, right? Because this just landed on me. Actually, I'll even confess. Like early in my ministry, when I was a part of a church as an associate pastor, I was heading the marriage ministry, and because of my own story and my own experience, I used to tell people that they should never give up on their marriage. And I mean never. Similar to the story you have shared about saying it's never too late to pursue your children.
Yeah.
And you got confronted.
Rebuked.
And I would say...
kindly. Or
in hindsight, it maybe is loving.
Emotionally.
Right? It was an emotional thing.
And he was right.
And so I've been emotionally and really lovingly confronted to say, no, there's times where you have to go. And you're justified in doing so. Yeah. And so I bring that up because what we're not saying is that you should ever stay in a community that's abusing you in some way or shape or form.
Yeah. And
the desire to be a part of something or to be seen or to be included should never supersede your own heart and what you're feeling. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Your worth, the things that, it's a huge point and it can take us in a lot of directions, but I feel like, what is that? If you're in a space where you're being used, or you're being diminished, or you're being shunned, and yet you can stay, but you're being shunned, and yet you can stay. I mean, that's, we're not necessarily talking about marriage specifically. We're talking about, a community, though, and the relationship dynamic. Because in community, when these things go wonky, it really is usually between a couple people, and then the sides are chosen.
Right. Yep.
It's something.
Sometimes the people collect, supporters. Yeah. For their position.
Sympathizers.
Yeah.
Or other marauders and mutineers. I mean, So I've got some more examples I want to step into after the break, but let's take a quick break. Yep. And then we'll come right back into a few more stories because I think the rubber on the road is really, really important.
It is.
in this space. So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast.
Every man has a kingdom. Not every king rules well. Like a living piece in life's checker game, you are moving across the board towards your time of greatest authority and impact. But what kind of king will you be? In King Me, I want to guide you through the 6 stages of the masculine journey and invite you to walk with God into healing encounters and validating experiences. Through this, we can learn to wield love as our greatest weapon and provide a kingdom where hearts are free. Every man does have a kingdom. Not every king rules well. You can. It's your move.
Now available on Amazon. See kingmebook.com for more details.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast. Last part 2 of episode 2.
Yes.
And talking about, what happens? What do you do? And man, I just got to say, this is so much easier to talk about sometimes than to be in the middle of. And we've been in the middle of.
That is true.
And so to talk about it, community and why community is so dangerous is because even in our missional years now with Zoweh, I mean, there's some people who don't really want to see me or talk to me. I'm not on their most loved list.
Yeah.
And that's so freaking unfortunate.
And it's only you, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep. That's right.
That's not true. That's not true, man. It's the saddest thing. I mean, and there's plenty of people that feel that way about me too.
Yeah.
But and it's like, you're just so hopeful, right?
Mm-hmm. That this will be different. That
we can work it out, that we can talk about it, that we can, so.
And come to places of, we're back to the joy of forgiving and reconciliation. That's what could be available or supposed to be available, but is not always able. Could be available, but is not able to be accomplished because of, some of the challenges that face. And I mean, let's go back biblically. Even John Mark.
Mm. Yeah.
And, Paul, just like, he's not coming.
Yeah.
I think the translation basically is he's flaky. He's left before. We're not taking him on we need dependable people on this mission. And Paul's not wrong.
He's not.
And Barnabas says, I hear you, but he's coming.
He's coming anyway.
He's the protege. I see it in him. Well, I don't see it. I do. I don't. Well, and I don't think they came to fisticuffs. I think they came to, we agree to disagree, but then there's still the parting of ways. And then you get the letter. A couple decades later, I think, is the math on that. And tell John Mark hi. As a matter of fact, tell John Mark to come. Yeah. I'd love to see him.
Yeah. Funny how a couple decades can soften some things.
So in those moments where there is no joy, to wait 20 years for joy, when two or more are gathered in a confrontation in my name, I'll be with you. And then it goes into, so do this. I mean, that's right in the
Matthew 18.
That's right in Matthew. That's right in that place of, you catch a brother you catch him. That's something like that. You catch a brother who's not doing the right thing and you confront him and it doesn't go well.
Right.
Go get a third party. And now where two or more are gathered in my name to now bring this up, I'll be with you in the confrontation. Right. And try to bring him in, try to bring him back, invite him back in. So,
why do you think that's written that way? I mean, my supposition would be, if you and I are having a conflict of some kind, then and we can't resolve it one-to-one, right? Then what we need is a third party mediator. Right. We need and not necessarily to take my side.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what that means in there. It's kind of like,
I thought about how fun would it be if in that biblical mandate, you go get your guy, I'll go get my guy. And now it's 2-on-2, right? Now there's 4 of us in this conversation versus 2-on-1.
Right.
Or 2v1, that whole idea. But I think you're on to
maybe it's the third guy that can see both sides that can help bring things back together.
And the the Paul, Barnabas, John Mark story, there's timing. And like you said, you changed your mind about marriage. You saw something or encountered something on your journey that had you, take another position. Yeah,
that wasn't quite so absolute.
Right. And I think that's part of all of this, that that happens in community, that, back to the enemy is at work. If our greatest hope is belonging and being wanted and contributing and being a part, being seen and known, then, there's this false self creature, mine and yours and Caleb's, that can be used by the enemy to, bring discontent, disconnectedness, disunity. And that's just one thing. I mean, back to the other thing, just levels of maturity and being, I'm not there, and I'm not sure. And the freedom to be in that space and yet, it's
not be threatened by that.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the one thing I want to make sure we talk about before we, close some things out, but
I think we got to have a couple more episodes about this.
Okay.
I'm just saying, man, when we were talking about this, it was like, yeah, we can just do a couple episodes about dangerous community. I think there's at least 2 more episodes in this.
Okay.
Because there's
lots of stories.
We have done a lot of like this, with our listeners and our viewers. And I feel there's some things we could go deeper into that would be important.
Well, the one thing I want to make sure we cover is, when you're talking about a community, you're probably talking about somebody's kingdom. Back to the leadership and lovership and who's in charge and what is it to be kind and strong and fair, and yet bring reign and rule, bring some kind of freedom with rules and guidelines into a space and govern there, as God has given you this company or this team or this tribe or this, talking about Boy Scouts. This is our, this is, this not the pack, that's Cub Scouts. This is, troop. It's troop, unit. This is our unit. This is our troop. That is really, really what I think is the biggest wild card in community, whether it's dangerous or it's joyous, is I probably don't want that first year coach, right. Just like I'm not sure I want that first year pilot
or pastor,
right? I mean, you want the experience, right. And you want to know that there's the scars and the woundedness that. And the recovery of some of those things that brings about a kind of wisdom. And I think any good king or queen, if we're bringing in feminine hearts, any good image bearer who's being entrusted with a community of sorts, a community of other image bearers, that's a big piece to who, I think about when you said earlier in the podcast about joining one.
Yeah.
I mean, do your research, look into this storyline. And then, I've been a part of church communities that I was there for a while and then something wasn't right. It didn't look right. Something went against the grain of either where I was or what I thought things should be like.
Yeah, where you got to maybe
on your
journey.
And so the crazy part is, like we tend to stay and complain. We tend to kind of organize our mutineers, our posse, and that can be detrimental.
And we don't have the tendency to ask questions. We have the tendency to make statements.
And yet it can be bad. And are you part of that?
Right.
Exposure, are you the one, not the whistleblower, but for lack of a better term, does God have you there?
Yeah,
to be the one straw.
Maybe so. I mean, the one that comes to mind again, I mentioned it, I think in the last episode, is like at our weekends. What we ought to do is very different than why don't you guys do it this way? I was wondering. Yeah. You ought to have live worship music. Is different than why do you guys not have live worship music? Because every king over whatever their community is, king, queen, whatever you want to say it, the leader of the community,
coordinator, right, leader, facilitator,
is given authority over that community for a specific purpose. And if you believe like we do, you believe that, God is putting people in places on reason, for a reason, for a purpose. And I think about a study I read about. I'll have to look it up and maybe get it into the show notes, Caleb. But there was a study done where there was a class of kindergartners, 30 kids, and they were put on a playground that had no fence around it. And all the kids stayed within like 6 feet of the playground equipment, right in the middle of the playground. They put up a fence around the whole playground, like way out there. And now the kids felt free to play in the entirety up to the perimeter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So the perimeters, whether it's, in a community that you're leading, we're leading, or you're leading, those are there for a reason. Yeah. Right. And so God puts these perimeters up for us. He's creating a community. Yeah. Right. And they're there as a leader. You've got to work with God to figure out where those edges are. Mm-hmm. Because then the people that have been put in your charge in your community have the freedom to move about the area.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's important. I think there are, some of the great challenges that we face in relationship, if Acts 2 is, and they all enjoyed each other, the community, the sharing, then this is the thing the enemy has really got to double down on and find somehow ways. And so when you come through the door, you're bringing your true self into the relationship and a false self. And that, I think, is where I'll probably close with some communities expire.
Yeah.
Some communities have a term for your life.
Yeah.
Or for others' lives.
As a community.
And most communities probably move far beyond their expiration dates just because change is not easy.
Or it goes better than you thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Closing the doors on, most of the doors that I know on communities get closed because of moral failures or inappropriateness, or it just can't, let's not save this. And it usually happened from up top within the leader or leadership. And so, a few of them can go another generation, kind of find a new guy, a new person to lead that charge. But it's very, very tricky. The founders, the beginners, the ones who started it, can that community live beyond the borders of that person's mark, good or bad, and so I think that nothing wrong with, because it can happen in a company, let's say, nothing wrong with working somewhere for 50 years. But where I'm at in my life and stage, 50 years, same company. I go right to, I wonder what roles he had. I wonder, because there's a community on floor 7. There's a community on floor 14. There's a community of managers.
Right.
So 50 years.
That set of cubicles.
Yeah. Then you retire vice president, but 50 years in the mailroom. Gary tells that story about the guy who was 30-some years a waiter at Disney. And Gary's like, what's wrong? That's just so interesting, and whether that speaks to somebody unwilling to risk or somebody who, being comfortable, that can be a really dangerous thing.
Oh, yeah. I think about Ted Lasso. Remember the story of Nate? Mm-hmm. He starts out as the kit, kit man, laying out the jerseys and the towels, and then gets promoted. Ted brings him up to a position.
Coaching, yeah.
And then he leaves and goes to another club. Spoiler alert.
Another kingdom.
Yeah. And then it doesn't go well there.
Well, unfortunately, at first it does.
Right. Right.
And then
the character of the king is revealed.
Rupert comes,
and he ends up back the kit man.
Lasso
Richmond. At Richmond. Yeah, he kept wanting to say Manchester.
It's a great.
That wasn't it.
Yeah, it's a great story of, that's a.
And he's happy as can be, to be in part, because so the position. That's another part of community we could talk about.
Yeah.
Is the position in the community
Let's
what's
do a special
important?
on Ted Lasso community.
Yeah.
Let's make that.
That's actually a great idea. Is the position in the community what's important, or your sense of being a part of the community that's important? Mm-hmm. Because I think about his story.
Yeah.
He did not want to be. He didn't even want to be on the coaching staff again. He just wanted to go and be the kit man.
But
see how he could be a part of that culture.
I love this example. Okay, we're going to take another minute because what's churning in me is Nate loved Richmond football, and yet he was hiding in his position.
He was
the first time around, and Ted Lasso is really wooing him and seeing him, and to the point that when he sees him, Nate is just yeah.
Don't look at me.
And so he's promoted to places for his glory. We've got a whole podcast series on the glory of your life. Mm-hmm. But he's hiding there. But the second time around, he's not hiding.
Right.
He's recovering.
Right.
He's really recovering. So to your point, it's the same position. No, it's not the same position.
Same job.
But he's coming from a very different position. Mm-hmm.
It's a place that he could go to recover, right?
And
that's a good point.
And could he arrive there? Those are always tricky. Could he have? Would he have? But no. This is what happened. At least in this story. Mm-hmm. Could he have done it different? What if he hadn't? The father wounds in there are a whole other factor, and the pressure that he felt to. Yeah, so that comes out later in season 3. But Nate is a great example. And we could pick, I think, almost any one of those characters and the arc of the development of their character and how Roy Kent goes from. We could go on and on. But
Jamie Tart is a great one.
That's another great one.
Oh
so I think to not start a new podcast within the middle of a podcast.
Right.
I think those are great examples of. We've got. Paul calls out Peter in the community for kind of sucking up to the Pharisees, and I wasn't there. I'm not sure if he did that well or how he did it, but the point is still, even in one of the greatest communities that we could possibly talk about in Christendom, Jesus' friends in whom he entrusts his power and authority and releases them, and Acts 2. And conflict and contention, and then how to move in spaces when you can hold both the hurt and be able to have the conversation with some sincerity of let's talk about this, and our listening guide is a huge resource for. How do you do community well? Mm-hmm. And again, it won't be perfect because we will miss each other. But when you do, how do you bring resolve? Mm-hmm. And what does that attempt look like? Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't go well, there's
you might have to wait 20 years.
It's probably time to say, well, this is the kingdom in which I've been entrusted, and I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
And that's a sad day for everybody, the whole kingdom, and leaving and departing with, reviews to write or posses to form even outside, or, and that's for the person leaving, or, for the wounded king now who's feeling betrayed to, post or write or let me just make sure everybody understands, and have that. That's why it's very dangerous.
Yeah, very much so,
and very challenging. And yet, what about the possibility of forgiveness that doesn't lead to reconciliation? And I would want to close it with that. I think that's one of the most beautiful ways departing can have. Sooner or later, that betrayal or that bruising and wounding is going to come up for the forgiveness system. You know, I think it's like a bus. It's like a bus system. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stops, and you may not get on the bus,
but it's a loop.
But there's buses. You may not get on that one, but another one's coming, and then you can go somewhere else, and there's another bus. You know, so the forgiveness piece, sooner or later, and I hope actually later. You know, I would say forgiveness too soon is probably not kind to you or that other person. But when you can grieve it, which we've talked about, we need to talk about more and more, when you can really grieve that space of community lost and connection gone, and the forgiveness piece still for your sake, you know, otherwise you carry it, you know, a creditor debt. You know, you got somebody that you're wanting payment. You need them to do this. You need them to do that. And that's where God's whole, in King Me, it had to come in chapter 17. I couldn't do chapter 3 or 5 or 7 or in the masculine journey.
Right.
That piece of, actually that secret weapon of forgiveness. And because I talk about forgiveness in the warfare chapter.
Sure.
How do you disarm these bombs? How do you disarm this toxicity? How do you disarm it? And if 70 times 7 is right, it's going to take a few coats of paint. It's going to take a few attempts.
Yeah.
It's going to take
and let's not start with that.
No, it's exactly what I want to make sure I'm clear on. But don't stay in a community that's abusing you, that's using you. That's not good for your soul. When you do and you can leave, the opportunity to then healing, grieve, and experience healing, and find, that means you're going to try to find some community that can let you heal up. That's tricky because you're already pretty damaged. But to find a community, maybe a counselor, maybe recovery, maybe a space where, and unfortunately there'll be other bruised and hurt people in some of those communities. But if the leadership in that community is good, you got a good shot.
Yeah,
at finding a new place.
There's nothing wrong with a period of, as long as it's a period of time.
Yeah.
For some solitude.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I think that's what Nate did. He was all alone at West Ham when he went there, and it helped him see some things.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I want to promote, this thing that we have here on the table too a little bit. Zoweh.org/community. That's where the tenets of our redemptive community can be found. Yeah. And I think, have we done an episode or episodes about this? But if we have, it's been a long time.
When we first passed the legislation in there, we talked about it. I want to say the podcast is probably a good, how long have we been podcasting? 300. How many episodes are we? Almost 250?
280. I don't know what it is. But anyway, it's been since 2018.
Okay, I'll bet you it's in 2018, 2019. So
probably one of the first.
So I think that could be a big part of, the next episodes on the dangers of community.
Yeah, because these are all dangerous. Some of these
propositions,
not all. Some of them are dangerous propositions.
No doubt. And more stories, sure.
I think it'd be great. Will be messy. Don't avoid it. That's one of those ones that's dangerous.
Yeah, and those are they're there because, and we've actually, I just realized as you brought it back out, or I wanted to, have it ready, but it's, I think that's 3.0.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so the 1.0 version, there's a reason why manuals get updated and find more clarity and different words.
I just noticed this one's got red letters on it.
Yeah, it does.
Like we talked about.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and they're good words, right?
They are.
Redeemed heart, glory, God, intimacy, battle, small and intimate, introspective, cannot be contained, in a day, time, or a room. Freedom, deep places, messy, disruption, missional. Those are all good words.
Yeah.
But they have sentences around them. So I think talking about that could be really good.
It really could. Well, this is a great subject, man. It's been fun to talk about.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. So I hope you'll consider jumping into our community. Yeah. We've got a ton of resources that we just want you to have.
Yeah, a lot of them are free.
And the Zoweh community loves to create environments and resources for hearts like yours to connect with God and each other, which is messy. And so, go ahead and raid the shelves and poke around on Zoweh.org, ZOWEH.org, and lots of resources there. And also, men, you're kind of the next ones on the radar, October 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th at Sharp Top Cove in Jasper, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. There'll be 500 probably men joining us. You might be one of the 250 new guys, like SJ said. Who,
Bring your guys with you. Bring your community.
Bring your community. Yeah, and neighboring kings, neighboring kingdoms can align for the goodness of the kingdom and the brotherhood that's available there. So hope you'll give a look at Zoweh.org/events. Everything about the Heart of Warrior Encounter is there. So,
yeah, man, it's going to be great. Thank you so much for joining us. If you leave us a rate, a review, a subscribe, a like, whatever platform you're listening to or watching on, if you'd click whatever you're supposed to click, and that arena helps us to be found, helps other people find this message of more. And Zoweh.org/events, Zoweh.org/community, and hope you'll join us there, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is Zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.